Hello, friends. Welcome aboard the Round Trip Stories podcast, where we share stories of moving around the world and back again, reflecting on the lessons we've learned along the way. My name is Melissa.
And my name is Tracy, and we are so glad you're joining us for today's episode. Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Family Guy and Mexican entrepreneur, Jaime Aparicio. In part 1, Jaime shared about how moving away from Mexico to the U.S. during the latter part of high school and through university helped to define who he was, know his inner voice, and value the U.S. university experience and beyond. In this episode, come listen to Jaime's round-trip stories of returning to Mexico and how his flexibility and positive attitude helped him navigate and put roots down in Mexico as an adult. So buckle your seatbelts and make sure your tray tables and seats are in their upright positions as part 2 of Jaime's round-trip story gets ready for takeoff. All right, here we are in our second episode with Jaime Aparicio. And this episode, we are going to talk about his repatriation to Mexico from the United States. So we can't wait to hear, Jaime, we can't wait to hear your stories about your repatriation and experiences. But before we get into the stories, just give us some details about when and why did you leave the United States and return to Mexico?
So we talked about how I moved to the U.S. initially at the beginning of 2003. And so at the beginning of 2010, around May, I think, I moved back. And the why is because I had already flirted with the idea of leaving the U.S., of going somewhere else. But then this time I was together with someone who is now my wife, with Erica. And it was her time to move back. And since I had already had these feelings of wanting to move away, and I was together with her, and I had been away from my parents for such a long time, it sort of started making sense in my head to finally make the move and move back to Mexico. No, something interesting happened now that I think about it. Sort of like my ritual or the something special about this stage or this decision in my life to move away from the U.S., which had been my home for the previous 8 years, and move back to my original home. What I did with some friends was I took a 2-month trip through South America. With two very good friends of mine from California. I went to Aruba, I went to Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina. I went to a lot of different places. And then I went back home to my parents to start looking for a job. I needed a bed to sleep on, right?
So that's important.
I didn't have I moved back without a plan. I just moved back to figure things out, okay. At that point, they lived where I live today. They lived in Puebla. So I went back to the town where I grew up.
Okay. And so then what are you doing now?
I lived in Mexico for 2 years, Mexico City. I got married in 2012. And then me and my wife decided that we wanted to live in Argentina. Well, she wanted to live in Argentina, and I was open to living anywhere. So we moved to Argentina. And so eventually I was invited to lead the expansion of a tech startup, Latin American tech startup, one of the first big startups in the ride-hailing industry. And I took the chance. So I started working for a Brazilian company in Argentina. I did that for about 7 years. And now I am in the health industry. I'm working on a new startup. But check this out. This person, who is now my business partner, is from Puebla, and I met him in Stanford. So everything again. So I met my wife. I got together with my wife while living in the U.S., and I met my current business partner while doing an education program at Stanford. Both are from Puebla, and both I met with them in the U.S.
It's a small world after all. So we would love to hear a story about your initial re-entry back into Mexico after you left the United States.
So something funny is that the way I described it back then, and I think it's still the best way to describe it, is that I had to learn how to be an adult in Mexico. Because when I left, I was 18 years old, living with my parents. And then I really grew up as an adult, got my first job, got my first car, while living in the US. And so when I came back here, I didn't even know how to get my license. So learning how to do things as an adult, I couldn't get a credit card because I had no credit history. Nobody wanted to give me a credit card. I think that understanding and becoming familiar with everything and everyone, seeing some old friends again, seeing my parents, other family members, becoming familiar with the way things worked was how I spent that initial year or so.
I guess just like kids that don't move away have to learn how to be an adult, you can move back to your home country. And if you didn't go through that process of learning how to do all the adult things while you were in that country, you have to relearn it all over again or for the first time in that context. Just like when any other adult moves to a new country.
Yeah, and there's an additional thing which I don't think is very common in the US, but in Latin cultures is more common, which is since people spend a lot more time living with their parents, it also takes them a little longer to learn how to do specific adult things, because when you live at your parents' homes, they take care of stuff, And so for some people, not all, but for some people, it takes time to have to do certain things by yourself, right?
Right. Yeah.
Did people expect you to know all this stuff, and then were they surprised, or what kind of reactions did you get as you were trying to adult in Mexico?
No, I mean, it was, that's the best way to describe it, but it was not that dramatic.
Okay.
The funny story that I can refer to is when I had to get my license. I don't remember if it was my license or my ID, one of the two.
Your driver's license.
My dad told me, "Hey, don't worry, I know where the place is. Let's go over there. I'll take you." So we go there, and I guess I looked a lot younger than I was. I was about 25, I think. And so when I show up, we ask the questions, like what's the process like, what do we need to do? And the person is explaining it to us. And then the person thought that I was a minor and that my dad had to be there to sort of make right. Things happen. And I said, no, I'm 20, I'm an adult. Even though I don't look like it, I am.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's funny. So tell us a story about something that was hard about moving back.
So the funny thing is that I've talked about this many times with many people, and the hard part, I think, were the day-to-day things. Like, I didn't have a huge thing that was super hard getting adjusted to. It was more on the day-to-day things. And one of the things that I found the hardest was everything that had to do with mobility, like driving, the streets, literally the streets, the infrastructure for moving around is a lot different in Mexico than it is in the US. The culture around driving is very difficult. It's very different. So I had that was hard to adjust to because I was not used to it. And and I kind of liked the way things were set up in the U.S. I still do. I still go back to the U.S. and when I'm driving, I tell my wife, "See, this is what driving should be like everywhere. You stay in your lane. The lanes are visible. You know where things are."
Yeah.
In Mexico, that doesn't happen. Some people come here and they one time they asked a friend of my wife's who was from the U.S. He asked, "Hey, where's my lane? Like, how do I know where I should be?" And she realized for the first time that there were no lanes in the streets. She's like, "You're right. I don't know how we do it. We just do it."
It's intuition.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody just adjusts.
So it was things like that. It was things like that made it hard because they were daily things, things you dealt with on a daily basis.
So just out of curiosity, had you learned how to drive in the first place before you came to the U.S.?
Yeah, I knew how to drive in Mexico. That's where I learned. And I did have my license back when I was 16 or 17, or a permit. And I did drive to school. So it was not like I was doing it for the first time. But I got used, after 8 years of driving in the U.S., I got used to the way things were. And then coming back was hard. Also, I came back to Mexico City, one of the largest cities in the world.
Yeah.
And so that was also, I mean, it was not as simple a task to drive in Mexico City.
Yeah, you just need a whole nother set of reactions and times. Like, you have to have faster reaction times, right?
You miss an exit and you drive around for an hour, and I'm not even joking.
Oh,
right. Tracy, did you drive when you lived in China? I can't remember.
Manuel. Well, we did a little bit, yeah, but we didn't really drive like deep in the city. We were more in the suburbs.
Okay.
But my husband was very good at driving in China because he also learned to drive in El Salvador, and he was a very, like, active defensive driver, and he did a great job.
When we lived in Peru, I got very good at taking taxis and could use the other transportation that was available, and we did at some point get a car. But I only drove one time, and that was when my husband was very sick and we were driving home. It just scared me because it is such a different style of driving.
Yeah.
So tell us, besides the driving, I'm sure there were other, like you said, day-to-day things that were challenging. But what were some things that you found helpful during those transitions or after those transitions?
I think that one of the things that I believe has helped me overall is, and I think that this was something that I developed by living abroad the first time, which is I have a relatively flexible personality. I don't suffer that much with when things are out of place, or when I have to adjust to things, or when I have to learn how to do new things, or how to move around in new places. So I think that helped me a lot. I don't think about any big change as super difficult or a period in my life that I had to struggle. And I think that that is partly because of, like, I did it many times. I mean, that's not to say that there weren't difficult things. We've talked about some of them. But despite those difficult things, I think that I developed a lot of flexibility, and I didn't get stuck on the things that didn't work. I focused more on the things that I could enjoy.
Can you think of any examples of when flexibility has helped you?
Yeah. One of the examples is when we moved to Argentina, we lived in the tiniest apartment ever, and it was our first home as a married couple. And so it was weird. It was the tiniest place that both of us had ever lived in, and we were sharing it, and we threw parties in it. But so that was hard, becoming accustomed to sharing a space with someone new and having the place be so small. And in a country where you didn't know anybody or were in the process of learning how things worked. And I think that the flexibility and the positive attitude helped me a lot. I could have had a very hard time adjusting to that if it wasn't for like what I'm describing, just taking it easy and enjoying what could be enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I remember, Jaime, you saying one time, we were talking about like moving countries, right? I remember you saying, like, if you were deciding to stay in Mexico or to move to the United States again, and you said, you know what, I know I love my country and I know all the problems, so I can prepare for them. But if I go to another country, I don't know all the problems, and so I have to like adjust to the problems. But I love my country, and we all love our countries, and that includes their problems. And I thought that was a really positive comment that you made, about your own country, about.
Yeah, something that I learned by living in a couple of countries is that I believe that there comes a point where you don't look for, like when you're thinking about where you would like to live, you don't look for the things that you want and try to find them in a place. You look for the things that you're willing to tolerate and then try to find that place, because there's going to be difficult things everywhere. And your level of tolerance to those difficult things is what really helps you adjust to the place. Because you cannot find it's very difficult for a person, I believe, to find a place that has everything that you love, and that has only the things that you love. You have to look for the things that you love, but you also have to pay close attention to the things that you don't love and understand if that's something you're willing to tolerate. And I think that the key decision is more on the willingness to tolerate rather than on finding the things that you like.
That is interesting to think about.
I feel like it's a scale, and sometimes the scale changes, right? So like we at some points in our lives, we tolerate more things, but then we get to other points in our life where you're like, you know what, I'm not going to tolerate that anymore. I mean, and whether that means, we have to move out of the country I'm in into another country or
Yeah, you're right.
It can help us make a change, right? When our balances change and our balances of our tolerance change.
So we're getting close to finishing up our interview here, and we have a list of questions for you to kind of pick from I like to think of them as our choose your own adventure questions. So I know you have that list in front of you. So which of those last questions do you want to answer?
And for our audience, I'll just go ahead and go over the questions while Jaime decides.
Good idea.
So A, how does your time abroad continue to flavor your life now? B, what rhythms do you have in place which allow you to remember your time abroad? C, what do you do with all the feelings and memories and relationships and love for the place and people that you left? And then D, do you have a favorite funny story about your time abroad or transition back?
Okay, so I have ways of answering all of them, but I think that, why don't we go with C? What do you do with all the feelings, memories, and so on, right, of the places that you've lived? Mm-hmm. I think that what has stayed with me is, and this is something that today is more relevant than ever, I think. I believe I learned that walls are unnecessary to build around you, around your thoughts, around your ideas, and to be open and to appreciate other people's cultures, other people's points of views, to understand that our truths, my truths, and the way I like to do things are not necessarily the correct truths or the correct ways to do things. They're the correct ways for me. And I feel comfortable with that. But realizing that because something is the correct thing for you to do doesn't mean that it's the correct thing for others to do, allows you to be open and to respect, not just to respect other people for the sake of people being respected, but to respect other people for the sake of appreciating them and being able to build relationships with them and being able to, be open to learning new things yourself. Because the fact that I feel comfortable with my truths today doesn't mean that I cannot learn something new and that I can't become comfortable with something different in the future. So being open to that, I think, is something that I have learned, and it is a consequence of everything I've gone through, of the people that I have met, of the relationships that I have built, of the memories of the places that I have lived, that I have, and the feelings around all those times when I was able or was fortunate enough to spend a day, months, even years with people that are very different from myself. I mean, if you stop and think about it, you're very different. There's a lot of differences between yourself and people that you're very close with, your cousins, your brothers, your parents, and being able to appreciate everyone despite those differences and being open to learning things. I think it's one of the main things that I've picked up over the years and over these experiences that I've been fortunate enough to live through, and I'm very thankful for them.
That's good. I like that.
Thankfulness. Yeah. I'm so thankful for time spent abroad and with everybody that we've met, because they help us to see the world as a bigger place, right? And to see how humanity is so complex and beautiful. And we can really see that when we meet people from all the parts of humanity, right? All right, Jaime, thank you so much for being with us. And we have one more question. And one of the reasons that we're doing this podcast is to really encourage people who have been abroad and are going back to their home country. So what is a last word of encouragement or advice you can give to our listeners?
I think that that one thing that I would share is how people should look at change, right? Because change sometimes comes unexpectedly, because there's a job opportunity for you and you just have to move away or have to do things differently. And sometimes change is something that we look for, right? Because we want to experience new things. And I think that embracing change and not being afraid of it is something that I would tell people to invest time and energy in doing, in embracing change and not being afraid of it. When change comes to us rather than when we look for it, I think a lot of the times people create horror stories about what things could be like, and those horror stories are very much associated with the things that we're not willing to tolerate, or we think that we're not willing to tolerate. And I think that not getting ahead of yourself and imagining how bad things could be is a good practice, because I think that something I've learned is that things are hardly ever as bad as you think they're going to be. Things are always worse in your imagination than in reality when it comes to these types of situations, obviously. And I believe that people learn that things are a lot more manageable, and that we as people have far more internal resources than we think we have. And so not getting ahead of ourselves and not creating horror stories about what things could be like, and giving ourselves an opportunity to live through that change and adjusting to it, and leveraging on those internal resources that we do have, whether we know it or not, I think it's something that I would encourage people to think about.
That's really good advice.
Yeah. Well, Jaime, thank you so much again for spending your afternoon with us, and mostly for encouraging our listeners and taking us on your round trip story from Mexico to the United States back to Mexico, to Argentina a little bit, and then back to Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget the trip to Germany and around South America.
And the other trip to Germany. And, yeah.
And when I visited you in China.
Oh, yeah, and China, because he came to China to visit us. That was awesome.
Yeah. You are a global frequent flyer, for sure.
We love it.
Thank you, Jaime.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Tracy. Congratulations on this new project that you guys are embarking on. I wish you a lot of success, and I look forward to hearing your voice and my voice on this podcast.
As we land this interview, we hope that you have been inspired by Jaime's round trip stories. He encouraged listeners to embrace change. We global nomads are a people who enjoy big changes now and again for sure, but the change of moving back to our home countries can knock the wind out of us. Find your people to help you through this latest set of changes, whether it be family, in Jaime's case, or new friends who have also had a sojourn abroad. Change takes time, and you are not alone on your journey. Even flexible and positive expats need time to catch their breath. Be sure to put on your oxygen mask first. We hope this podcast is a bit of oxygen for you as you breathe anew. And no matter what leg of the journey you're on, we are so grateful you have brought us along with you.
Come back next time for a Round Trip Stories Customs episode, where we'll reminisce, laugh, and converse about a random topic related to customs and culture. Want to be part of future conversations? Join our email list and get the podcast equivalent of TSA PreCheck, including a sneak peek at upcoming customs topics and an invitation to share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. See the link in the show notes to sign up.
Thanks so much for listening, friends. We'll see you next time.